So, without further ado, I'm going to read you her bio. I'm going to introduce Gay, and then we'll have her do a quick, or not a quick reading, but a reading of Acting Womanish, which is featured in the zine that you all have in your hands. So, Gay Pasley is a professional nurse, an award-winning community leader, and photographer. She is a recent graduate of Oklahoma City University's Red Earth M.F.A. program. She has presented as a lecturer for organizations such as International Association of Forensic Nurses, Society for Photographic Education, the Ralph Ellison Foundation, the John Hope Franklin Center for Reconciliation, and the Scissortail Writing Festival. Gay has been widely published in publications such as Thread Literary Magazine, Elsewhere Magazine, Amistad, and the Manila Review. Gay's photography and writing seek to capture the underreported experiences and challenges of what it is to be a working class woman of color. So I will now hand it over to Gay.
Acting Womanish. It's the summer before I go away to college. It is a Saturday. My parents are no longer married, but they continue their romantic shenanigans despite the reasons for the divorce and despite the fact that my father is married to another woman. The sky is blue and the weather is fine. The flowers are in bloom. They want me to go away. My brother goes to work. My grandmother remains in the back room of the house where Caribbean grandmothers belong, at least at my house. She minds her business about my divorced parents' relationship. They all mind their business about the promise that my father has made to molest me when I am old enough. And old enough is here. My father gave me the keys to his new car. It was a two-toned navy and sky blue 1984 LTD. He said I could go around the corner, and I did. I went around the corner and picked up my boyfriend. My boyfriend was a teenage radio personality from the other side of the tracks, whom my parents hated. He went to public school. I went to private school. He lived in Turley. I was from North Tulsa, suburban acres. We met at Central High School. I rode the bus home and his big cousin picked him up in a really cool car. My boyfriend is funny and sweet. He makes me laugh. He makes me feel safe until he doesn't make me feel safe. He holds the best parties in North Tulsa. It's at his parties that I learned the chant by Rockmaster Scott and the Dynamic Three. The roof, the roof, the roof is on fire! We don't need no water. Let the motherfucker burn. Burn, motherfucker, burn. When his mother, who is a single mother, dresses like a man and owns her own businesses, makes an effort to meet my mother turns up her nose. My mother threatens to tell his mother that her son, my boyfriend, should keep his penis in his pants. I tell my mother what I knew his mother has every right to say. I should keep my legs closed. I should stay off my knees. My mother slaps me with the back of her hand. I am sure they heard the back slap my mother gave me as far away as the West Indies. We love one another. We walk one another home until the lamp comes on. He buys me candy at the candy store. When he plays Pac-Man, he always wins, and he puts our initials in as the winner. C and G. He has a scar on his forehead and the letter C tattooed on his back. I have a jerry curl and upturned breasts. Things were always good with us until things started to go bad. Sometimes he locks me in the closet. Some days he won't let me go. His sisters are always kind to me. They always come to my rescue. They always set me free. Today is not a bad day for us. I drive around the corner and swoop my boyfriend up. We go joyriding in my father's car. I am gone for hours. We take an excursion through Turley, but really, it's Indian land. It's all Indian land. We pass lakes and ponds and large hills, red dirt, always red dirt everywhere. We are carefree. It's the country. Lots of curves, lots of roads and alleys. My younger brother says that when he returned home from lunch, 4 hours into an 8-hour shift, I was still not there. I was still gone with my father's car. When the tornado alarm blasts, I remember the alto of my father's drunken saxophone. I have my father's car. I need to go home. I drop my boyfriend off. I drive down my street. I park my father's car in front of my mother's house. My mother storms out of the front door. We pass one another at the fence. And as she passes me, she says in dulcet British West Indian lilt, "Your father is going to kick your ass, and I am going to let him." I watch her as she gets in the car and she drives away. It never occurred to me to flee. It was as natural as the air I breathe. It's my turn to fight my father. Growing up, I thought everybody had to fight their fathers. I thought it was a rite of passage. It's my turn now. Like Oprah's character in The Color Purple, all my life, I had to fight too. A girl child really isn't safe in a family of men. All my life, I have watched my father fight. I watched my father fight my mother. I watched my father fight my grandmother. I watched my father fight my godmothers. Nobody ever fights back. They all run south, never north to freedom. It's my turn. I deserve to fight my father. I passed the fence in front of our house, past the birch tree. I passed gently through the storm door. I tossed the keys to my father's car on the mahogany wood table and pick up weighted candlesticks. I stand next to the piano that my father had sung lullabies on. I wait for my father to approach. Our eyes meet. He charges from around the corner hallway. The brass candlesticks in my hands are now lethal weapons. I blunt his fucking temple. I kick him in his goddamn balls. My grandmother pulls me off my father's body. My father calls me a motherfucker and staggers for the door. My mother and brother say that I deserved to fight my father that day. To this day, they maintain that I stole the car. My grandmother remains silent. My father, who is also a storyteller, tells everyone that he whipped my ass. He also says, "Don't fuck with that bitch. She crazy." Thank you.
Beautiful. So I'd like to open it up if anyone has any questions or comments about what you just heard or about any of the work that you've seen so far or anything that's contained within the zine or the exhibition as a whole. Does anyone have anything that they want to share?
What made you come up with the title?
Acting womanish, or who the hell does she think she is? Or both. So, who the hell does she think she is? I've heard that a time or two when I've had to stand up for myself. Doesn't make sense to me, but yeah. That Gay Pasley, who the hell does she think she is? And so I thought of the images from the Women's March, and I wanted to make it inclusive of all of us, because who are any of us to have the audacity to think, outside the box, or to protect ourselves, or to stand up for ourselves. So that's where who the hell does she think she is came from. And acting womanish, so one of my major influences is Alice Walker in The Color Purple. And she coined the term womanist, which is a term used for Black feminists, and that speaks to our intersections of being Black and being women. Oftentimes in Black culture, if they feel like you're acting too grown, that kind of thing. So she, womanish or womanist comes from acting womanish. And so, I thought back when was there a time in my life when I was acting womanish? And that was the time, when I chose to fight back. So, thank you for that. Thank you.
I think you have a lot of courage to do that, to act womanish.
Thank you. Also, the flowers. Alice Walker has a book of essays called My Mother's Garden. And my mother is a gardener, a very avid gardener. She is, again, from the British West Indies. It was the British West Indies then. And so we come from an agricultural family. My grandfather was a goat herder. They lived off the land, and at one time, actually you can see she planted those prickly pears because our house kept getting broken into. And once she planted that, we didn't have near the break-ins. And so oftentimes when I go home, you'll see me taking pictures of my mother's garden, and I've been wanting to do something with that work. And so this was the opportunity to do that. So I'm really excited to show off her work that way. And so, great work. Thank you.
Did anyone else have any thoughts or questions? Comment?
that I've met to see or hear any of your work without needing time to process. And it's a good, beautiful feeling, but it still is just so overwhelming each time. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the gifts. Thank you.
I've heard these stories so many times, and I'm like, don't cry, don't cry.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that I love vulnerability. I mean, that's why I'm an artist, that's why I love art. It's the thing that I think gives art its superpower. All the arts is that we're so used to presenting a flattened version of ourselves to the world. And it's important to do that because we have to protect ourselves, right? But art gives us the chance to kind of passively connect in a really vulnerable way. And in reading that story and in looking at the work, it was just like a string, like attached from me to you, because I felt it. I know that story, and I definitely related to it on a personal level too. And I think that's so healing. You can take something horrible and painful, but ultimately empowering, and heal from it and help other people heal too. It's such a superpower that artists have. It's true. Well, I'd like for you to go kind of through the process. What was it like? This was your first zine.
This was my first zine, and it was quite an educational process because it's not anything that I'd ever been really familiar with. So I think probably, for the first few times we met, I kept calling it a Zine. And Veronica literally had to explain to me, it's the precursor to magazines. It was used during the feminist movement, the second wave, and I'm like, oh, this is something I might need to get into. It was, I think when I was looking back through my emails, I started this process in July, and I was literally on the threshing floor with this project. I had to go back home several times and visit that area and that space. This is what the door looks like now, that I passed through, and that's the same storm door that I went through. The piano is still in the same place. And if you look in the picture of me that I found, that was really summer right before I went to high school. Off to college. And if you look behind, you'll see brass candlesticks on the piano. But yeah, it was a true synthesizing of my life story, I feel. My love of Alice Walker and her work, and how it's influenced me. I remember looking at The Color Purple in the movie theater the first time, and when Oprah said, all my life, I knew what she meant when she said she had to fight. And so having the opportunity, because I don't think that I realized how all of this went together. The Women's March, acting womanish, my mother's garden, until I was able to finally put it on the page. And when I tell you that I finally got a draft that I could be happy with at 5 o'clock this morning, I'm like, and again, I started in July, and I'm pretty sure I called Angie yesterday. I'm like, Angie, she's like, what? Because I'm just in a state of like, I gotta get this done, So, but I am so glad I gave birth to this baby. And I look forward to doing it more. I was sharing with Veronica that I'm also a veteran, and there is a Sister Soul Survivor is the name that she goes by on Facebook. But she is a female veteran that has established a home for female veterans here in Oklahoma, and she asked me to help volunteer some things. And so one of our first projects will be doing zines for the female veterans.
Should we bring one here?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
We can add it to our collection. share it. Well, does anyone have any closing thoughts or questions or comments or praise?
Praise. I just want to say, like, I know you started this last summer, and I mean, it's gone through so many iterations, and it's so funny because her process, it's so interesting, and I'm always like, you will be fabulous. Well, it's like I'm her personal hype girl. But it's like, and then look at this. I mean, it's so beautiful. And it's so different than what it started, but it's exactly what it needed to be, so.
Yeah, I
Wonderful.
The moment I looked at it, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is you.
It is.
Yeah, I agree. It was like more stark before, like stark outlines. I was like, oh no.
And I really tried to tell it in the layers, so I shouldn't have to say with the background, in the pictures, you'll see stories too. So
Beautiful. Visual with the words. I love how he was the author, the artist, the great thinker, activist. All that is like in one little you. And I really and truly inspired and admired.
thank you.
What gets me is this last page about your mother and your brother. Say you deserve to fight your father that day, and then that they maintain that you stole the car, and that your grandmother remained silent. It reminds me so much of being believed and validated, and that's, for many of us, it's like that's what hurts the most. But then you get a little bit of a win. Don't don't fuck with that bitch.
Exactly.
I mean, that, in a weird way, that's a win for you, but I see that in it. I mean, I don't know, that's what gets me. It's just that I relate so much with that.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's always nice to hear, where in the story it touches someone. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how those stories come up, at Thanksgiving and Christmas about me stealing a car. I'm like, really? So.
They'll always have that version.
Yes.
Types of that version of the story.
So what happened with the boyfriend?
Interestingly enough, it was like raising a ghost up from the dead. He actually messaged me the other day. And he came from a lot of trauma, and so we see that a lot. Or I see that a lot, and so, but yeah, we stay in touch, kind of, sort of, I have to maintain healthy boundaries and distances, but there was one picture that we took, around that time that, because I didn't think I was pretty, I never would take pictures, and so I was asking him if he had it, and he was like, you wouldn't take pictures. So anyway, but it was a fun conversation, and then I cut that off. No picture, no photos. So.
Oh wow, so this had you drawn up all over.
Oh gosh, yeah. Going back to my mother's house, yeah, and there was just a lot of bee activity, and pollen, and I thought about how the experiences of these women, the missing, murdered Indigenous women, and just how all of that, that pollination and how we pass that torch on to one another, and how that that energy influenced my story. So.
You find that in your art a lot, that you're influenced by or things that you didn't expect?
Oh, absolutely. And so I'm just finding that I just get into the process and then it reveals itself. I remember when all this went down and I was just really mad that nobody protected me. And I thought, what else were they gonna do? So You know, there's just so much else that is revealed through the process. Like, I didn't think I had an option of not going into the house. You know, why didn't I? Why did I go into the house? How much of it really was intentional? You know, so those are the things that reveal.
It's a lot to unearth.
Well, thank you again. You guys have been a great audience.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Gay. Can we give her another round of applause? So you all are welcome to make a zine. You are welcome to take a look at the exhibition. You're welcome to have some snacks. The music is going to go back on in a few minutes. And yeah, I would love for you to stay and hang out and look at some art and make some art if you wish. And thank you again so much.